Welcome to Government Speak. This is where we'll cut through the government speak to get the information you need about county programs, services, and events straight from the source. Welcome to Government Speak, Contra Costa County's official podcast. In this episode, we're talking about the Community Warning System, otherwise known as CWS. Contra Costa County's official alert and warning system that helps keep you informed during emergencies and other critical situations. Behind every alert is a coordinated effort involving first responders, emergency managers, public information officers, and technology systems, all working together to deliver timely and accurate information that helps you take the right actions to stay safe. We'll discuss how emergency alerts are issued, who has the authority to send them, the different ways you can receive alerts, and why preparedness starts long before an emergency happens. Joining us in studio at 10 Douglas is Community Warning System Manager Lorena Herrera and Senior Emergency Planners Richard Beeson and Leslie Monroy. Lorena, Richard, Leslie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristi.
So, Lorena, what is the Community Warning System and how and why was it created?
Yeah, so the community warning system is an all-hazard system. It's designed to alert the community of any emergency or disaster that may be happening at their location. We support public safety agencies in sending out emergency alerts to the community should they need to take protective action to protect their life or health. Messages like alerts like evacuation orders, evacuation warnings, shelter in place, or even lockdowns due to any type of law enforcement activity. The system itself initially was designed solely for the purposes of notifying the community of any hazardous materials release at the refineries. However, over the years, we have evolved to make sure that we are capturing all hazards. And so today, we actually send out alerts for all type of hazards that may be affecting residents, making sure that they're aware that there is a hazard, but not only is there a hazard, but what protective action they can take so that they stay safe.
So what kind of emergencies trigger these alerts? Because I've seen the ones where you have the evacuation order or warning from a wildfire response, but then you also see missing person type alerts. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we do a different range of alerting for Contra Costa County. Some of the alerts that we issue, like you mentioned, are evacuation orders, evacuation warnings, which are essentially an evacuation warning would be working with the public safety agency to essentially tell the community that they need to prepare to evacuate. And then there are also evacuation orders that are telling the community that it's a lawful order to leave the area now because there's a hazard and because if they don't take that action, their life or their health could be at risk. Leslie has had also different types of alerts that she's sent out. You want to talk about like some shelter in place?
Yeah, so for the refineries, if there is ever a incident, there is a shelter in place that would go out. We also send missing persons, as you mentioned earlier. So for residents that may be at risk, so this could be due to age or due to mental illness or any type of illness, we send out missing persons alerts as well.
But you're not just doing that independently, you're working with other agencies. So what agencies work together with the program to share information with the community?
Yeah, so we do a lot of coordination with public safety agencies. We don't ourselves issue emergency alerts. When we see a fire, we don't just initiate the alert because we see a fire, right? We actually work with all the public safety agencies, law enforcement, fire, with our health officers. And even in like larger scale operations, we would work with the county's emergency operations center to issue alerts. But we do a lot of training that helps us coordinate. And Richard is actually our lead in all of that training. If you want to, talk a little bit about that training.
Yeah, sure. So Richard, Leslie, and Lorena have no authority to tell the public to do anything. Every alert we send comes from a law enforcement officer, a fire protection officer, county health officer, the folks that Lorena was just talking about. But those positions out there amongst all of our 19 jurisdictions and unincorporated areas, the turnover is pretty high. So once a year, we go out and we hit all law enforcement agencies, all fire protection agencies, and train them on alert and warning activation. And the goal is to keep them informed of their responsibility for initiating alert and warning and our role in sending their message to the public.
So you kind of touched on something that was interesting too. None of you are sworn officers or deputies with any law enforcement agency. You are civilians who are charged with the responsibility of the community warning system, its maintenance, its upkeep, making sure people are aware of what the system is and how they can and should get involved in terms of getting information during a crisis. But let's find out more about who you all are. How did you fall into this work? Is this like you grew up and you said, you know, I want to be, was there like a young Lorena who's like, I can't wait to be the community warning system manager when I grow up? Or, you know, how do you get into this line of work?
Yeah, so I think emergency management has always been near and dear to my heart. I actually, funny enough, I started in college being a pre-med major, and then I realized that I actually really liked the emergency management side of things. And so I decided to take that on, and I got my bachelor's degree in emergency management. One of my first jobs was actually in the county of San Diego, and I was supporting a project manager in what I didn't know was his alert and warning project. And so one day he's just like, I want you to record all of these messages to support our alert and warning. And I was like, I don't even know what that is, but but I did it, right? And then saw a posting for Contra Costa County's community warning system position as an emergency planner, and I had the experience, and so I applied for it, and you know, it kind of dove me into this world of emergency alerts, and I actually really loved and enjoyed it. And so then I just kind of stuck to it, and I've gone to, you know, different agencies, but alert and warning has always been near and dear to my heart, so I really enjoy what I do.
What about you, Richard? What's your background?
Long background in emergencies and communications, so it all kind of came together here, right? I was a soldier for a long time, and I was a police officer for a very short period of time. I fought some fires, air traffic control for a number of years, and then I went into business, and I was working with startups. And although it wasn't public safety, when you're in the startup world, in the global startup world, there's a crisis about every week. So crisis communication was a major element of that. And then, I made some pretty big life changes a couple of years ago, decided to come back to the public sector. This is a really great place to be in alert and warning. Our alert and warning program is the most intricate, complex, and effective in the country, bar none. And this is a really exciting place to be if you're in emergency communications, because we get to do and work with, we get to do so many things other alert and warning programs don't do, and we get to work with people that I think a lot of other alert and warning programs don't get to work with. So, my bachelor's was in business. My master's is in divinity. I did not study this. I just kind of wound up here through a combination of practical experience and luck, I guess.
And we're so glad to have you here. And Lizzie, what about you? What's your background?
Funny enough as well, I did my undergrad in health sciences from Cal Cities Bay. And then I started with Contra Costa Health as a community health worker at West County Health Center. And then I always had a passion of just helping people and working with the community, talking to the community. So I then started as a health educator with public health, still in Contra Costa at the different schools doing reproductive health. And then COVID, of course, just threw a wrench through everyone's job, I think. And I was on the front lines. So not only at the COVID testing sites, but then when it became, COVID vaccines, and through there, I became a site lead. So, it was really nice and awesome to become a leader per se, and kind of just, I felt like in the emergency realm, I really did like taking lead and helping others, in time of crisis. So then, the position opened up for the sheriff's office, and I was like, hey, I have this experience, not knowing what I was getting my head into at all, but it's been a really, really fun ride, and I agree. I think this is a great place to dive into alert and warning, and I'm happy too that in that outreach aspect, I still get to talk to the community and do that engagement piece. So I really do love it.
Well, the passion comes through from all of you when you talk about kind of how you came, where you came from, and how you got here. And you touch on something, Richard, when it comes to the intricacy of the system. Can you all walk us through what happens when an incident occurs and the uniqueness? What causes the next phase of the response to happen and to get the message out? Because you're dealing in science, you're dealing in people, you're combating misinformation, you're trying to get people's attention in a world where they are constantly distracted. So let's talk through like what happens when an incident occurs.
Yeah, I mean, when an incident occurs, and we'll just use a fire. I think that's the most easiest example. But let's say there's a fire in like near Mount Diablo. Essentially what's going to happen is there's going to be a bunch of first responders that are going to go and do fire suppression efforts. So they're going to go try to put out the fire, right? But at some point, potentially, the fire grows. And when the fire grows and it starts threatening structures or resident housing or anything like that, the first responders will make a determination of whether or not an emergency alert is warranted. So in this case, we're probably looking at potentially an evacuation warning, or an evacuation order is probably what they're looking at. Once they've determined that, they actually call our sheriff's office dispatch, and it will route them to one of us. So either myself, Leslie, or Richard, who take basically the on-call. We're the ones who send out those alerts. This happens in a matter of minutes. So we're not talking about hours. We're not talking about days. We're talking about minutes, right? And so essentially they ask for a bunch of information. Where is the fire happening? Who's being impacted? What area do we need to evacuate? And all of that information is then given to us. And our job is to basically put it into a condensed form that the community understands and send it out as soon as humanly possible so that residents can take protective action. And that's essentially how an alert is essentially created, right? So it takes multiple processes, but like I said, a matter of minutes, but we go through all these processes to make sure, one, we have the information that is accurate from the actual public safety agency who is responding, but also we translate all that information into something that's easily digestible for the community so that when they get that alert, they can trust that that alert is true, and then they can take action to protect themselves and their loved ones.
A couple of things that really make the community warning system unique. First, we've installed hardware all across the county at public safety agencies, specifically in their dispatch centers. Whenever we publish an alert, the strobe goes off, everybody's made aware, and the emergency message is displayed. And then, if that city has its own notification system, they can duplicate our message and send it out via their communications methods. We also have systems in place that let our county PIOs know, that let county leadership know when there's an emergency going on in a specific area. And then, because we have so many hazardous materials facilities here in Contra Costa County, we've created automatic processes that begin at the facility. If there is an incident at the facility, the operator or the fire protection agency at the facility can fill out a quick template and hit send. And when they do, Contra Costa County Hazmat is informed, CWS is informed, the public is informed when it's a certain level of alert. Local fire protection, law enforcement are all informed, and then other like PIO, media, and sometimes county leadership are informed instantaneously, one click of a button.
And I think Richard makes a really good point, because one of the things that, people know to be true is that community warning system sends out emergency alerts, but what they don't see is all the other things that we send out notification to other public safety agencies. We also send out, via multiple channels. So it's not just, you get the phone call and text message. We're also automatically posting to social media, to our website. If there's a refinery incident, that's automatic. Those sirens are automatically being sounded. So we've essentially eliminated a lot of the human element into it. We have that initial contact that we need to make sure that we initiate the alert. But further from that, all of this is already pre-designed, pre-automated, and so we don't have to we don't have to pick up the phone and call, you, Kristi, that we sent out an alert. You got that alert, right? We don't have to pick up the phone and call a dispatch center. They got that alert, right? So we're communicating with them via automated processes that really help enforce that emergency communications piece, because they in turn are going to take that information. They're going to rebroadcast it or re-amplify it, right? They're going to send it to their group of users, and then those group of users are going to send it to other people. They're going to send it to
Their
constituents, and then those constituents are going to send it to the people who they know, and that's how we kind of create a web of information flow, right? We're not just looking at one single method of output. We're looking at multiple methods of output that support a holistic approach to alert and warning that I think makes us very unique as a county, because we take a lot of pride in what we do. We have some of the top technology that is installed in the system, but we also forget sometimes that it's not just technology, it's people.
Mm-hmm.
It's the relationships that we build. It's the coordination that we have with our law enforcement agencies, with our fire protection agencies, with our local nonprofits who trust us as a authoritative voice on behalf of those public safety agencies to get that message out to the community. And it really helps us disseminate and get the word out quickly so that residents can take action.
Richard also brought up a great point about other city notification platforms, which is really, really important. When I'm out there educating the community, there's a lot of confusion saying, oh yeah, I'm signed up. I got your text yesterday. And it's like, no, you're signed up. Maybe your city has a notification platform. And so it's good to be signed up for both, right? The importance of signing up for them to receive, power outages, trees down, road closures, and then CWS will send you that alert to get out of your house, right? Leave now, evacuate now. And then those platforms as well, those cities do a great job too of helping us as well and saying, hey, sign up for CWS as well. So we're really lucky in working with great partners here in the county that help us really amplify that message.
One of the unique things in Contra Costa County that we have is that we are the sole alerting authority. So what does that mean for the community? Well, community warning system is the only one that issues emergency alerts, right? We talked about how those are then amplified through other communication medias, but we're the ones who the public safety agencies contact to send out emergency alerts. We don't just do this for the unincorporated area of the county. We do this for all 19 jurisdictions, for all fire, for all law enforcement agencies, to support their efforts in getting people the right information at the right time so that they can make good decisions for themselves and their loved ones.
So that touches on kind of, you have Amber Alerts, that kind of technology. So why should people sign up if they're getting information? You've hit on all that, but if you want to reiterate it, why should people register for the community warning system?
Yeah, one of the things that we actually don't do, Kristi, is we don't actually send out Amber Alerts. So that's one of the misconceptions that sometimes the community has, is the community warning system, because we utilize the same technology to send out emergency alerts. It can be a little confusing, right? They get an Amber Alert, then they get an evacuation order. They think, 1 + 1 = 2. But California Highway Patrol is actually the only ones that issue Amber Alerts in the state of California. The community warning system issues emergency alerts using the same technology, but it's also important for residents to register for the community warning system, because when we send out a alert via what we call the wireless emergency alert system, which is that federal tool that everybody sees that buzzes their phone, and it makes this really annoying sound, but it catches your attention, you get about just like one simple sentence of what that alert is, and it'll say something like, evacuation order in said area, visit cwsalerts.com for more information. Well, if you sign up to receive emergency alerts, you're actually getting significantly more information and detailed information. We're not just saying evacuate in the city of Martinez, right? We're telling you evacuate in these boundaries, right? North of, south of, east of this area. These are where the evacuation orders are. And this is where you can find more information. And this is what you need to do when you're evacuating. You need to get your pets on a leash. You need to go, potentially if there's like an area that's closed and we have road closure information, we're also going to have that information in the alert. So even though we we issue alerts for everyone, we always encourage registration so that residents can get more information, because you're going to want to know more information. You're not going to just take one sentence as fact, right? They're going to take 2 other actions to make sure that they verify that information. And so we can give them more. We want to give them more. And we do encourage residents to visit cwsalerts.com to register to receive emergency alerts.
Yeah, when I'm out tabling, I'm like, hey, we want more ways of alerting you than none, right? If you're getting an alert, we want to call you, we want to text you, we want to email you, we want to wake you up to leave.
So let's talk about that. We've talked about the system, we've talked about the technology, we've talked about the role that your team plays in communicating with different jurisdictions to get information in and then to communicate it out through the mass, notification system. How can people sign up? I think that's probably the most important question we can answer.
Yeah, so people can sign up on our website, cwsalerts.com. This is our forward-facing website where people can register, but people can also always see our active alerts. So when you register, you can put up to 3 phone numbers for phone calls, 3 numbers for text, as well as 3 addresses, locations, right? When we send out our alerts, they're based on a polygon or a shape. And the reason for that is if you're in Antioch and something's happening in Richmond, we don't want to send the alert to everyone. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it causes some fatigue with trying to, get the attention of people every day. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about like a world in which our phones are constantly pinging, I get a text message, I get an email, if you have social media, you're also getting, those pings on social media. And so why we ask residents to register is because, again, we are the ones that are sending emergency alerts. When you get an alert from us, we're not telling you, it's happening over here, but you're not affected.
Right.
We're telling you that you are being affected, or that your area of residence is being affected. And so you need to take action to save yourself and your loved ones, right? And so we're never going to just start issuing alerts, road closures or it's hot outside or something like that, right? We're going to always tell you that there is a hazard and that there's an action that you need to take to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and your loved ones.
Well, and you touch on something that's really important too in terms of emergency preparedness and what people can do to be prepared, because that starts before the actual crisis or the emergency is occurring. So what are some emergency preparedness steps that folks can take in their household to make sure that they're prepared? Because we know if there's an emergency like a big wildfire or an earthquake, the resources from an emergency response standpoint are going to be going to the location that needs them the most. So even if you do have a very important emergency, you might not have a response of first responders coming right away because they're all dealing with the bigger crisis at hand. So what are some things that people can do, kind of the control in an uncontrollable situation, to make sure that they're prepared in a time of crisis?
Yeah, I mean, step 1 is register for emergency alerts via cwsalerts.com, right? But also, we want to make sure that residents are taking personal preparedness efforts. And so we ask residents to have an emergency plan, know how you're going to get to, point A to point B if there is a fire or any other hazard, so that you know how to get out of that area. But also have a communications plan. How are you going to get in contact with your family if you guys are separated during an emergency? All of these things that we don't think about on a day-to-day basis, but that we start thinking about when there's an emergency. Those are things that we ask the residents, have a go kit. Are you prepared to have, to sustain yourself for 3 or more days, right? You have water, you have non-perishable items. Do you have, if you have pets, do you have food for your pets to kind of get you through the next couple of days, but like I said, if nothing else, register to receive emergency alerts. But we do make, we ask residents to do their part in emergency preparedness, because we're sending out these alerts and we're hoping that residents are taking that next step to prepare for that emergency, prepare for that disaster, because it will happen one day. And we want to make sure that we, as a whole community, not just our agencies, not just our first responders, but our whole community is prepared to be able to respond to that emergency.
What are some misconceptions that people have about the work that you all do, whether it's specific to the community warning system or just kind of alert and warning in general?
Wow, we have a couple.
How much time do we have?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that people think that we're kind of standing by, waiting to essentially push a button to send an alert. Leslie, Richard, and I do a great amount of different things to make sure that every step of that process that I talked earlier, right? There's an incident, the public safety agency determines that an alert is requested. They call our dispatch center, and then they contact us, and we send out the alert. There's actually things that we have to do at every step of that process to make sure that there's no breakdown in communication, and it's not an easy process. Richard talked about, training the public safety agencies, but it's not just training the public safety agencies. It's also training the dispatch centers to know what kind of information they should ask for. It's also training our additional duty officers on how to send out an alert. It's making sure we're up to date with the most important technology so that we can best serve our community. But on top of that, there's also a whole other emergency communications, emergency public information piece that we have to take into account. And we have to also consistently coordinate that with not just the public information officers, but with our emergency management partners. So there are things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis, not just keeping up the system, not just making sure that the message looks, great, but it's also all of the coordinated efforts that we do on a day-to-day basis that makes the system function so effectively.
I was going to say, what other misconceptions?
I can add one more thing. We are not an omniscient eye or presence over the county, right? Richard, Leslie, Lorena have no authority to tell the public to do anything. When there are wildfires going or when there are incidents occurring in the county, we are plugged in, we are watching, we're prepared, and we're ready to send that alert if we get that call. But that call has to come from an expert in the field who has the authority to alert the public and to tell them to evacuate, shelter in place, or lock down. So, we do hear from the public every once in a while, we saw a fire burning for 2 hours and we didn't see a community warning system alert. Yeah, at that time, probably the incident command or the experts in the field in charge of the situation didn't deem that an alert was necessary, right? But what we would like the public to know is that our records indicate and will prove that when we do get that call from the incident commander or the expert in the field, we get that alert out in a matter of minutes, right? We're ready, we're prepared, we're watching the situation, and as soon as they call us, we're ready to send it and get the message out to the public. Sometimes the public may see an incident occurring for a while before the warning goes out. Mm-hmm. That's all determined by that alert is sent when the experts in the field determine that an alert or a warning needs to be sent. And it works the opposite way too, right? Like when people, and look, an evacuation is very stressful, and our hearts really go out to anybody who has to leave their home. But just because the fire's out, that doesn't mean that the expert fire protection officer in the field is ready to let you go back home. Right. And so it may take a while for that all clear to come that let you know you can go back home now. But that's determined by the experts in the field. And please don't assume because there are no more flames and everything smoking now that it's safe to go back in. We will send out an all clear to those who are sheltering in place or those who are locked down or those who are evacuated. It may take longer than you think, but that's because the people in charge of that incident care about you, they want you to stay safe, and they want to make sure that everything's secure before you resume normal activities.
And to touch on that, I think a similar misconception is that the CWS alert is going to have all the critical information about the incident. And so when, Richard's talking about that incident, that incident commander or the public safety agency, they want you to just leave now, and that's it. That's the protective action. If you want more information on the incident, what exactly is happening, that's when you tune into local TV and radio, to get that more, the better picture. Because we understand the community too, right? We understand, we live here and work here as well. We want to know what's happening. But at the initial alert that's coming from CWS, it's going to be a protective action because there's a hazard that's happening.
Well, and that's kind of the classic public information issue we all run into where it's, if a situation is fluid, there's going to be more questions than answers at some point. But the commitment is we'll get you that information as soon as we have it and it's available, because what you're talking about is experience and expertise and, being restrained in the release of information, but also prioritizing public safety, which is the most important. Not only do we want to get it quickly, but we want to get it right. And so we have to let the processes play out, where our first responders, who are the experts, they're the boots on the ground in the field. They're looking at those.
They're our eyes on the field. That's what I say all the time.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's so important to also maintain that integrity of the system, right? We're not sending you road closure information that isn't, an emergency. We're not sending you, a kitten stuck up in the tree. I know it sounds silly, but, so we do want to make sure that the integrity of the system is kept in place, because when you hear from us, that means that that's real. Yeah. It means it's affecting you.
That's what I tell people in outreach.
Yeah.
No news is good news from us.
Yeah, you will not hear from us unless you are in danger and you need to do something about it, right?
Right. And we keep that integrity to this day. And, people trust us. People come to our website and verify that we've sent out that alert. And it's good to be able to say that, the community will trust that if we maintain the integrity, if we make sure we're not just, giving them information that is not pertinent to them. And so that's why we're very passionate about what we do, as you can tell. We love talking about it. But we also want to make sure that the community understands that we are here for them. We're here to support them, and that we are the voice. We are the incident commander's voice, or we're the public safety agency's voice when we send out that alert. You'll never see an alert that comes from the community warning system.
Right.
You'll always see the alert that will start, this is a message from Contra Costa Fire Protection District. This is a message from the Office of the Sheriff. This is a message from Contra Costa Health Services. Things of that, agencies of that nature. Because people trust them, because they are the agency, right? That is also giving that instruction to the public, so that they can take that protective action. So I do think, those are some a little bit of misconceptions, but I think it's good to also provide clarity that, we're doing everything that we can to support those agencies to get that message out to the community. But it's a coordinated effort, like you mentioned. It doesn't just take one; it takes a whole, agency coordination to make sure that the right information gets out to the right people at the right time.
So keeping that in mind, you've got the platform, you're the messengers, you're making sure that information is getting to the affected populations at a very vulnerable and critical moment. If there's one takeaway from our discussion today, what would you want people to remember the most?
Sign up to receive emergency alerts at cwsalerts.com.
Sign up for CWS.
Yeah, I mean, it's true, though. I mean, we want to make sure that residents can trust that we are working with public safety agencies, that we're constantly training, that we're constantly making sure that we are on top of our game. And so we want them to trust us. And so when you register, to receive emergency alerts, first, that's the first action that I want the community to take, is go to cwsalerts.com and register to receive emergency alerts. But also, trust that when we send out that alert, it's important for you to take action. Read the alert, right? Open up your phone, click on that text message, click on that, ping, whatever that may be, click on it and read it, because it'll tell you all the information that you need to know to take action for your family.
Great. Well, thank you, all of you, for the work that you do every day. Thank you for coming on the podcast. That's it for today's show. I'm your host, Kristi Jourdan, Contra Costa County's Public Information Officer. Thanks for joining us on the Government Speak podcast, brought to you by the Office of Communications and Media. But don't just take our word for it. Stay curious, stay connected, and stay informed. Until next time, keep your mind open and your facts straight.